Welcome, one and all, to our inaugural episode of what I believe we're calling the Fantasy Book Club here with Talking XP. For our first episode, I dragged my lovely friends into The Stand by Stephen King. And today with us we have Johnny.
Well, hello.
We have Zach.
Hello.
And we have Ryan.
Why, hello.
So before we launch into the book, I just want to give a little bit of background onto why I selected this. The Stand is one of my favorite books of all time. Going back to when I was a kid, my father and I, we don't share a lot of things in common. We don't like the same books. We don't like the same movies. Our forms of entertainment diverge almost completely. But there were two books he gave me when I was like 12, maybe 13. The first was Dune by Frank Herbert, and the second was The Stand by Stephen King, because these were books that he has read that he thought that I should at some point read. And I was a pretty avid reader as a kid. So I got into those books probably when I was like 13, 14. And The Stand took me a few tries, but because it's so long.
No kidding, I bet.
It's, depending on
The
what
fact that
version
you read that
have.
at all when you were 13 is shocking.
It's 1,100 pages, my version. Some other people's versions, I know we were talking 1,500.
Ours was 14.
Yeah. So
14,
so it took me a while, but I was undeterred. And as soon as I got through it, it was an epiphany for me. And last year, not only did I discover they were making a new live-action The Stand series that I was very much interested in, because I've always wanted them to do an updated version, because there was a miniseries in the mid-90s, but it wasn't very good. Although I might change my opinion on that, but we'll get into that later. And of course, the coronavirus pandemic began last March. And when we initially went into lockdown, one of the first things I thought about was, hey, let's pick up my copy of The Stand and jump back in.
Let's read about a deadlier pandemic.
Yeah.
That was kind of a rough call.
Yeah.
Reading
Okay.
this in the... Should we start there?
Okay. Well, obviously, we'll have to be getting into that. But that was part of my reason. The other reason was, again, because it seemed like our nation had been so divided. And not only was there this book about this pandemic that happened, but also, like, the country
Lord.
basically split in two. And then there were the good people and the bad people. And, But again, we'll get into more kind of plot stuff later. Where I wanted to begin was, I wanted to see what you guys all thought about this book.
Okay.
Johnny,
Who wants to go first?
let's
All
start
right.
with you.
You say that you were an avid reader when you were younger. Well, I was fucking not.
I did want to say, yeah, you really threw... Because, I'm also an avid reader now. Maybe not so much before, but you really threw our two friends in the deep end with this book. Because it is long and dense.
Well, you guys said yes.
Go
That's
on.
why you should always check
Yeah.
up with me. You should
Apparently.
before I get you to promise something, you should realize that the reason why I want a
Right.
guarantee is because there's a back end.
But you did
anyway,
it. We're proud of you. Good job.
So
what'd you
I have never finished a book from start to finish, and then I get thrown into the deep end with The Stand with 1,438 pages or something like that, something really close. My overall review was, it was okay. I don't know. I wasn't like blown away by it, but I didn't think it was awful by any means. That was my overall feeling of that.
okay.
just-
Did
if
you
I
have
were
a
to just-
favorite
Go ahead.
character? Was the other question I had for you as well.
Favorite character? That's a good question. How about let's make the rounds of overall feeling, and then we'll
Great.
come back to me, and then I'll give you my character.
Okay.
Zach, do you wanna go next with your feelings of it?
Yeah, Zach.
You-
Let's hear from you.
All right, sure.
Probably the
Well,
next most avid reader to me in
Yeah.
our group, who's read the most fantasy and science fiction and all that
I've
jazz.
definitely I've gotten really into reading books lately. I read every day on my lunch breaks, and I tear through all these fantasy books, and this was still a challenge. And so I came off when I finished the last book, the last page, I was pretty upset, and I actually did not like this book at all. I've since cooled down a bit, and I'm just kind of negative. I have a lot of problems with it. I respect it, but I got some issues that I will talk about. Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
I'm cooled down, but I was pretty heated in the moment.
All right. This is, I'll be perfectly honest, not necessarily what I expected. I thought we were all going to love this book, but maybe I have one left person to be surprised, Ryan, and I'm
Yes.
especially interested in hearing about you because you engaged with different mediums of the stand that I don't think
Yes.
the others of us actually did.
I ended up reading the Marvel Comics version of the stand because I do read a lot of graphic novels and stuff like that.
So it's a
granted,
miracle that this existed in the first place.
I was shocked. The reason I started with this and found it was because I initially was trying to listen to it on Audible, and I used to do a lot more driving than I do now, so I had the chances to listen to a lot more audiobooks. But just I live so close to my place of work, and I just don't have time specifically to just listen to stuff anymore. And so when I was initially trying to listen to it, I was also just trying to be able to focus on what was going on. I was trying to also read chapter summaries on the side, just so I could kind of keep, myself a little bit more up to date with it.
Engaged.
And engaged. Yeah, that's a good word for it. But basically, in the process of me finding this Medium article on the website Medium, it had a very brief little synopsis of every single chapter, and included between these chapters were images of art that I, looked like, comic art. So I was curious, and so I Googled it, and lo and behold, it was done by Marvel Comics, which I read the most of Marvel than any other comics.
Anything
Image
else,
would
yeah.
be the next brand that I read the most of. But I thought that was interesting, and I had already listened to the prologue and about half of the first chapter on Audible, and so I went back through and I reread the prologue that was in the comic, and I found out that it was almost word for word exactly the same, and the art basically filling in the gaps of any missing things. And so I basically read through the Marvel Comics, and at the same time I was kind of checking the in-quote work by reading the Medium article of each chapter synopsis. So I kind of got a pretty clear idea that it was pretty much following the book pretty damn closely. They changed the order of a few things, and it made sense why they did it the way they did in the comic.
Yeah.
Because I think in the comic there's huge chapters where it's just about this group of characters, and it's only these characters. And the
Right,
comic,
right.
at least in the first couple volumes of it, were doing a very good job about switching back and forth chronologically
Yeah.
between the different groups of people, which I thought was really good. And I really enjoyed the art. I really enjoyed their interpretation that they did. That being said, my opinion of the
Here we
book
go.
is absolute garbage. I hate it. I do not like it.
Okay.
And
Okay.
All right.
here's my reason for it. I'll retract my statement. It's not absolute garbage per se. That would be a little bit too harsh. But
This is about where I was right when I right when I finished the book. I've cooled down, but we could heat back up. We'll see how things go.
yeah, here's why. So I didn't finish reading the Marvel Comics. I read through the Medium article first, and the Wikipedia article. So I knew the exact summary of how it ended. So I knew going into this whole thing how it ended, which is fine. The ending is honestly the stupidest thing in the world to me. So just
Agreed.
knowing that going forward, I mean, it made me not hate reading it exactly. Because I didn't have a problem with that. I think the ending was dumb, period. To me, what was really the most interesting part about the story was the pandemic. Everybody dying, the surviving.
Mhm.
That's what's cool. The apocalypse part of it. The part
Yeah.
that takes me out of it that I just do not care about was the Man in Dark. I don't care about any of the supernatural stuff. I don't think any of that's needed.
Damn.
I mean, sure, you could have the two different groups of sides kind of amassing just through how they are as people. Like, that's totally fine, creating two different societies and seeing them clash together. I think that'd be cool. All the supernatural stuff, absolutely, I don't care about. And that's the part that really ruined it to me. The fact that the hand of God, spoilers for the end, comes
Big
down
spoilers.
and blows
Big
everything up.
spoilers.
I mean, I feel like people know that spoilers are
Probably,
coming.
Right.
but we still got to say it.
Yeah, we're going to do a synopsis here in a moment, just for
Oh, yeah.
anybody who may or may not be aware.
But
Yeah.
the fact that that's how it ends, like, that's the stupidest thing in the world. Like, I mean, when I read the Wikipedia article where it just says that, I was like, okay, well, obviously they're just abbreviating a bit. Like, that's not But like that's, and then when I was reading the chapter summaries again, that's exactly what they said. It's like, okay, that's the stupidest thing in the world. And then you see through the characters
I'm curious
that you.
what the comic book looks like with the actual Hand
So
of God.
the
Does
Hand
it
of
look
God,
like it?
it's really even more stupid looking because it doesn't look like what I would imagine the Hand of God would be. Because what I imagine is this giant white radiant hand sticking down. It's literally like this bluish lightning energy of, and it's just a little hand.
Like Mage Hand.
It's like Mage Hand. Yeah, exactly. It's like something really tiny, and it just says that, you know, in the dialogue, no more evil, right? And like, that's dumb. And like the other part of it that's really stupid, which I'm sure one of the reasons why, Zach, you might, I imagine, not liked it as well, just the fact that the three characters that you got to know really well just all get evaporated. Like, everybody there gets evaporated.
So, okay,
like,
I'll get into that. That's most of the problem I
Why
had.
don't
Like,
why don't we just give a quick
let's
little,
do a
little
synopsis and then I'll shit on the
what
book, and then
we-
you guys can talk about
Great.
what you like.
I'll give a brief synopsis. We can talk about what about the book specifically kind of makes us like or dislike, I guess, generally seems to be the feeling. And then we can talk about favorite characters and stuff like that. So, synopsis, and we're going to it's going to go slow at first and it's going to pick up towards the end because, again, 1,500 pages. So, book opens. There's a military base facility where they're working on some kind of super bug. It gets out. We see the guy who escapes this base through some unnatural act. The only person, probably due to random flag, but again, we'll get into that later. To escape this base, he ends up crashing his car into a little Texaco gas station or something down in Texas, where we meet who will basically ride us through to the end of the book, Stu Redman. From there, we kind of begin to see the spread of the pandemic. We jump around a little bit. We go to Maine. We meet Franny. We meet Harold. A little bit later, we jump to, is it in Oklahoma where we meet Nick Andros?
Nebraska.
Nebraska, somewhere in the Midwest. Nick
Somewhere
Andros
there.
jumps into the picture. From there, we're kind of slowly introduced to the rest of our characters. Glenn Bateman is found by Stu. Then Franny and Harold end up linking up with them. We meet Larry Underwood in New York. We meet his brief flame for a time, Rita, until her untimely demise. And from there, Larry ends up meeting Nadine Cross. Those are going to kind of be our primary characters throughout the book from there, at least for the good guys. Then we continue the journey. They are getting their dreams from Mother Abigail. They're traveling towards the center of the country, towards Kansas. Where was
Vegas.
it? No,
Oh,
where was
Nebraska.
where's
She
Mother?
lives in Nebraska.
She lives in
Is that
Nebraska.
Nebraska? Yeah.
Mother Abigail's in Nebraska. Everyone's headed that way. We meet
Hemingford
up
home.
with Hemingford home. We meet up with Ralph Brentner and a myriad of other characters.
Yeah.
All the while, we're slowly getting drip fed what's happening on the other end of the country. So we've got the good dudes, as we will come to know them, kind of all coming together on the East Coast and the Midwest. On the other side of the Rockies, we've got the walking dude, Randall Flagg, who's going around doing his dastardly thing, picking up his like kind of acolytes. We see Lloyd Henreid, we see the Trash Can Man, we see all manner of characters kind of joining up over there. Skip ahead a bunch of time. We get a bunch of supporting characters who serve various levels of importance to the plot. But they're pretty all kind of just passing from the 10 or 12 original characters that we kind of just began with. They make their way to Boulder. We see them set up everything, but things start to go wrong because the Dark Man is sort of secretly influencing Nadine Cross and Harold Lauder. They end up defecting and killing some of, well, really one of probably our favorite characters, before ultimately the good guys make the sacrifice to go and try and destroy the bad man in the West, leading to what seems to be the biggest point of contention with this book. For me, I love this book. The parts of this book that I think are the best, I completely agree with you, Ryan, are the pandemic segments. The first part of the book. The book is separated into 3 books. With the first being their journey to Boulder, the second taking place kind of in and around Boulder, and the third book taking place as the good guys venture out to go and defeat Randall Flagg. The first book is easily my favorite. I love the journey, I love developing those characters, and I love the falling away of the world that we find familiar for one that's a little bit more mystical and magical. And as Glenn Bateman states a couple of times, it's like the end of kind of the rational world and the rise of something kind of older. For me, that's what really sells the book. But I'm sure that we all have different opinions on that. Johnny.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, part one was definitely the best part for me. Like Ryan and you said, I think
I would also agree with that.
Sweet. So I think we all agree that.
Yeah.
That part one
So
was
read the
best.
first, like, what is that, like 500 pages? And
It's
then-
like 6.
Yeah.
It's
something
almost
crazy.
more than half,
Call it
if
that.
not
It's-
half.
Really interesting and kind of scary to see some virus that is 99% effective of killing the person, how it spreads, it being
Very relatable.
not what's the word, respiratory illness. Ooh, that was a lot. And especially we watched the new series, especially watching the series, it was a lot
I
more
bet.
real.
Which we'll get
when-
into that at the end. That's a
Yeah,
whole other can of worms.
That's a whole new.
But
there was speaking of that, there was this, like, one specific chapter that was all just about, like, strangers spreading and, like,
Spreading.
how
I was
easy
gonna say
it
that was
from
my
person to person.
favorite section.
That
Yeah.
was so psychically disturbing that I
Yeah.
actually had to put the book down for the day.
Mhm.
In our current era, I was reading this and I went, nope, this is too much right now. I
Yeah.
gotta come back. And I just
Yeah.
put it down. It's a lot.
Yeah. So content warning for anybody that
Content,
doesn't wanna read
yeah.
it.
See,
It will get intense.
I was gonna say I was just waiting for the moment to, but that was my favorite part of the book, was that I imagine chapter for you guys. In the comic, it was, I don't know if it's a whole issue. It might have been a whole issue or at least half of an issue. It was
Oh my
really
God.
cool to see it done artfully.
Sure.
Versus, I'm sure how you guys read it. It was really well done. With the way they split up the page, it was just that was, like I said, that was my favorite part reading it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It comes early. That's an early
It
part.
comes very
Yeah.
Comes early, yeah.
I mean, yeah. The entire first section of the book, or the first couple volumes, before they even start having these visions of Mother Abigail, I liked all of that as they're just kind of roaming around. I thought that was the most enjoyable part, like finding
Mhm.
and watching, Larry go through the tunnel right before she ends up dying. I can't remember what her name was, but yeah, basically Rita. Like all of that, him just going through New York by himself, very I Am Legend type
Mhm.
Yeah.
imagery.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Favorite
Yeah,
character, Ryan, also. I want to.
my favorite character was Nick, 100%
Okay.
Nick. I mean, the way he was portrayed, at least in the comic version, I just found him the most interesting, and I thought he was just the most enjoyable to read about. Like his story, his and Larry's are both the most interesting thing to me, which sucks even more so, especially since they're the two that get super killed. But which I
Yeah.
mean, I knew
I
that.
gotta say,
All I was gonna say is, like, when I was reading the chapter summary, and I knew the list of people who died before getting there. And of course, when I was just reading the chapter summaries, I have no attachment to any of these characters. I still don't really. I don't really. I never
Yeah.
really got into it that much. But just knowing, like, the character I was liking and enjoying the most charismatically was Nick, and just knowing that he was like one of those people, and being able. Just knowing what happened and then being able to put the I say faces to the name and the personalities as I was reading was interesting. And I was kind of surprised how much later in the book that Ralph showed up as well.
Yeah.
yeah.
When
Since-
Nick dies, the first time I read that, I was stunned. I could not believe that easily one of the best characters in the book.
I was pretty
which
shocked.
I think Stephen
Yeah.
King is aware, which I think is why he killed him.
Of course.
Just dies so suddenly, so
Yeah.
without any kind of warning, and there's no like kind of messing around. He's gone.
yeah. He's just dead.
You do not really hear from him again,
Yeah.
except for sort of through Tom Cullen, but that's its own can of worms as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly, Nick Andros, and this is because I'm an ASL interpreter, I felt like was kind of lower than he could have been. I think that he played too much into disability when he could have, making him deaf and mute, he could have just given him sign language and then but it was written at a different time, so I'm not going to nitpick on that. But
I should also clarify that we are discussing the 1990 released and published version of The Stand, the complete and uncut edition, not the 1978 version that was released, which has a lot less stuff.
Yeah. The 1400-page edition.
I think that there was so much more that he could have done had he known about ASL. I don't know if he did. Watching the series, he did end up adding that, which that's another thing. So I was glad that came about. Also, I'll talk about that just real quick. As an ASL interpreter, I noticed that Nick Andros, the actor, had no idea what he was doing. He was just acting. Franny, on the other hand, actually looked like she knew at least basic ASL. They were using ASL, a condensed version, a TV version, if you will, but Franny looked like she actually was using real ASL,
That's
and
cool.
it looked like she knew it. So that was interesting.
All right.
It was
Yeah,
cool that they made her
I think-
the interpreter. I thought that was pretty sweet.
I think that's a very fair assessment. I think it served no purpose. Yeah, and I think
Right.
it was a mistake and oversight and a product of the times.
And that's what I was going to say, is that it was a product of its time. That being said, with that as my perspective on Nick Andros, thought he was cool, but he could have been cooler. My favorite character was definitely Larry. However, I think that what could have been better was, I don't know, I just, watching his like quote unquote redemption arc, it could have been more precise, more, I don't know, if it were to be like, I don't know, I felt like it was too rash, I guess. I don't know. I think that it could have been better, but I do like his redemption arc, and I think that he was my favorite character.
Okay, Zach.
Okay, so off the top, my favorite characters were probably, I liked Stu a lot. I liked Nadine.
Mhm.
And I liked Tom. I thought they were the most fun to like read. I thought they had the most interesting sort of roles in the story. As far as they were concerned, there was this great arc about, well, mostly great arc about Tom going out to be a spy.
Mhm.
I thought that was really cool. Nadine's whole thing. Anyway, but aside from that, my favorite chapter of the book was actually this one chapter. The chapters don't have titles, but the theme of the chapter was No Great Loss. And it's on the other side of the pandemic. After everybody's like died of sickness, there's just all these idiots running around getting killed by their own like stupidity. I thought that was great. It's just like 20 people dying.
That was a chapter that stood out to me too.
I had a ton of fun. There's like, what are some examples? Do you remember any specific ones?
Well, okay.
There's one
They
girl
started
who's
listing them, right? They
Yeah.
said,
Yes.
like, this guy died because he was an idiot. This guy died because he was an idiot. That's
like
right.
there's
I
one
remember.
girl
Yeah.
who's like so terrified to go outside until she finds a gun in the attic, and then the gun explodes in her face.
Yeah,
When
because
she
tries
tries
to
shoot somebody?
Yeah,
who's
that's what it was.
seems
Who was
could
just
be harmless.
walking.
Who was
Might
probably
not have been
fine.
harmless, but
Might
yeah,
not have been,
without,
but
she
still.
doesn't know anything. But yeah,
And like there are just countless of those. I thought that chapter was a lot of fun.
the
Yeah, I thought it
dude
was pretty funny.
who streaked naked around Yankee Stadium and then died of a heart attack while he
Yeah.
was jerking off on
Yeah.
home plate.
Yep.
Hilarious.
Super fun.
Yep.
I digress. So my problem with this whole book really comes down to I feel like it was a lot of promises being set up in the beginning that didn't get paid off in the end.
In the end, yeah.
So
I
like
agree.
we have the promise of, I mean, the whole pandemic part was really good.
No,
And then you hit the free zone, the Boulder free zone, right? And you get this promise of like good versus evil, Mother Abigail versus Randall Flagg. You get the promise of this big bad Randall
Mhm.
Flagg. You get the promise of like all these characters doing stuff.
nuclear
And then,
warfare.
yeah. And then one by one, they just kind of get picked off in little, like, just small ways that
And
didn't
that's
really
not
feel
happening,
satisfying.
And that's not happening, and that's
Yeah.
not happening.
So,
Yeah,
like,
no, I feel the same.
Every character's arc just kind of fell flat for me at the end. You know, like Nadine. I thought Nadine's stuff was really cool. She's trying to like she's chosen for the big bad evil Randall Flagg, and she's trying to avoid him, and then she gives in, and then she gets pregnant. It's like, oh my god, that's gonna be insane. She dies. Don't worry about her anymore.
Yeah,
You know.
that did happen rather quick.
I think,
It happened for
Honestly-
like every character.
honestly, I liked Nadine's arc. Minus the whole I need to be a virgin for this boy thing.
Sure, but like I need to
But
be
it's a product of its time again.
again.
And she was
but-
also kind of cursed. There's also some other kind of
yeah, like I
weird
thought it was
level.
cool that, you know, she had the cloud of the dark man like hanging over her, and she
Right.
didn't know which way to go. But
Right.
then we're not gonna do anything with her, just kill her. Mother Abigail was really good, and then she's like, I'm gonna disappear for 5 chapters, then I'm gonna come back, tell everybody to leave, and die.
And die, yeah.
And it's like, well, what did you do out there? We don't know. Doesn't matter.
The whole point was just to get people to Boulder.
Yeah,
That's what
exactly.
it seemed like.
The entire fight, like, okay, we're like Mother Abigail tells the 3 men or the 4, go off to Vegas
With nothing.
and fight or do whatever, you know, make your stand. And they go, they die, nuclear bomb blows up, done. Meh. Problem
Yeah,
solved, I guess.
I think, okay, let's talk about the ending.
Well, I can go on and on and on.
Let's
we
talk
gotta get
about the
into this.
ending.
We
Before
gotta
we
get
go
into
there,
this.
I just want to say that my favorite characters, it's hard to
Oh,
to
right.
pick,
Yes, sorry. What would
but
what would you
Trash
like?
Can Man, which will be relevant here
Okay,
in a
you
moment.
told before we even read this book, you told us that was your favorite character,
Yes.
so we knew.
Yeah.
Why?
So,
but
Yes.
Trash Can Man, which we'll get into because it has to
Okay,
do partially
okay.
with this ending here.
Okay.
So I love the Trash Can Man. There are a couple other characters. I mean, Nick Andros has swapped up for him. Actually,
Mhm.
not a big Larry fan, but we'll talk about that.
Okay.
I do like
Different.
Stu, but honestly, of the crew, I'm a Glenn Bateman fan.
Glenn Bateman is underrated, I would say.
Glenn Bateman's
Yes.
strong.
And I think even though he says things in a way, he sort of breaks the fourth wall in a lot of ways. It almost feels like at times.
Yeah.
And I thought his character kind of gets at the themes of the book that I'm the biggest fan of. But let's talk about the ending here.
I can
See-
understand that.
Are we gonna be talking about the ending up until the epilogue, or are we gonna do the ending and then the epilogue separately?
Separately.
Okay, because
Separately.
the one thing I do want to
Yes.
say then before we get there is the 3 things that I disliked the most was number 1, and this is not necessarily in any specific order, but maybe it is. I don't know. Number 1 being the supernatural elements, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, the ending with the bomb, stupid. Number 3, the epilogue. That's those 3 things are all 3 the stupidest things about this book.
I think that the
Um,
epilogue is definitely something that I would like to talk about because of this series that just came out.
Yes.
They expand on that.
Yes.
And I think
Interesting.
that is an interesting point that
I-
needs to be made as well.
Yes.
Okay.
But the ending with the atomic bomb,
Yes.
that was
Sucked.
the biggest letdown for
was
me.
really-
Just
it
because
was.
I was so stoked to see like them doing like this stealth mission or something like
Some
that,
kind of
or rooting
I don't
the
know.
entire community against him, and then him unleashing this devil power onto everybody and everybody coming in, and then they finally stab into his head and he finally dies or some shit like that. But
Or-
no,
or
people
even-
get
fight or
caged.
something. Anything.
Even if Larry or anyone else pushed the button on the bomb, if literally anyone else did it, like that
Yeah.
would have made the world a difference.
I
you
think
know?
that throwing the hand of God into this was the worst decision for the ending. I
Well,
think that,
my problem with this is like it wasn't up to our heroes. They
exactly.
you know, they didn't go
That's
into
what-
Vegas
Right.
of their own volition. They didn't go with a plan. They were told by an old lady, just show up, you'll figure it out. And then they get there and they're like, well, something's bound to happen. And then it blows up, problem solved.
yeah, what
but
purpose
it wasn't
is it?
their idea.
I'm glad you all say
yeah,
this.
I know that you have something for that.
Because obviously I've spent a lot of time with this book, so I've had a lot of time to think about it, even
Mhm.
before we just did this read.
Mhm.
And one of my favorite things I like about this book is the religious aspect to it. This
That
idea
is
that
one of
that
if-
God and the devil exist in this world, at least post-pandemic. And there's a very real sense. I'm not a very religious person. I cannot claim to have read the Bible. But in my minimal amount of Jewish upbringing, you know, we did Shabbat. I know a couple of stories, and there's Passover. for me, it almost reads like in
You
this
don't gotta
world,
be devout to think religion's cool or the imagery and all that shit. It's fine.
Right, no. But I'm gonna go into a little bit of specific religious background because I think
Okay,
this book
okay.
pulls a lot from some very specific things.
Mhm.
It feels to me very much that this is almost in this world. This would be the first or second chapter of the new edition of the Bible. That this is
The New Testament.
Yes, this is the New Testament that is being created, and we've seen the first chapter before society rebuilds into whatever is coming next. And the vibe I got from this is a very kind of like Old Testament God, where God is not visible. You can't hear him. You can't see him, but he's there. And everything that happens is part of his plan. And the Old Testament God is not necessarily the God that loves you all the time. That's definitely part of it.
He uses you as examples.
But
rather.
he is unflinching and unwavering, and he acts boldly. And one of the reasons why I like the Trash Can Man so much is that as a character, he's very interesting to me because he's this kind of broken sort of husk, and he's been through all of these traumatic traumatic things, and he's been tortured, and he's a product of all of this kind of stuff that's happened to him, and yet he's found a place in this new world. And the evil in the world just sees him as a weapon, just something that they can use. It doesn't matter that he's, only half there, because you don't need somebody who's all the way there if all you want to do is just blow shit up. But what Randall Flagg doesn't realize is you can't control that kind of a person. If he's truly a weapon, if he's a bomb, he can go off on anybody, not just your enemies. And so in the end, even though we've had this idea the whole time that the Trash Can Man has been this tool of Randall Flagg, in the end, he's been a tool of God this whole time. Who sent him out into the desert? Who's to say that it was Randall Flagg that he was getting these powers
he
to find these
them?
things?
Yeah.
It's the same. If he had not gone and gotten that bomb and taken it back to Las Vegas, then God would not have been able to complete his plan and execute. So, there's this whole thing of, Trash Can Man sort of got a redemption at the end after an incredible amount of just, pain.
Even
And-
though it was a indirect redemption. Because he
Right.
did it for Randall. I see what you're saying.
Right, but
Still, yeah.
it's almost like motive is slightly less important than the outcome. There's also the story of Abraham, right? I'm not sure if you
Right.
guys are familiar
Yeah.
with this one in the Bible where
Yeah,
God
that's the
tells him to
first thing I was
sacrifice
thinking
his
of, yeah.
son, and then
Right.
he refuses, but that was actually what God wanted all along. It wasn't necessarily the explicit.
Well,
I think it was the other way around.
so he told Abraham to kill his son.
Right.
Abraham was
like-
like, I don't want to do this, but I'll do it. And
Yeah, he
then
was
right
like, I'll-
before he killed
Right.
him, God was like,
Right.
JK.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
you go.
I was just testing you.
right.
But you
Which
would
is
have died.
exactly what I
So,
thought.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So I just and I like this idea that all of our heroes willingly put them up for this sacrifice as well. They already know that there's no way they can win. And that was one of my favorite parts about you guys. You see it as disappointing. I almost kind of like the realism of it. These characters are realizing at the same time as the audience is that there's nothing they can do. They're not supposed to do anything. They get to the border and they're immediately apprehended. There was never a chance. Before they even all get to the public execution, they kill Glenn Bateman just because he
Yeah.
has a smart mouth,
And he knows exactly what's going on with, what was his name? Pokerizer's number
Lloyd
2.
Henreid.
Lloyd Henreid, yeah.
Oh,
He knew that
yeah,
he
yeah.
was broken inside.
Yeah.
He poked at it.
But anyway,
well-
I like the Trash Can Man because he's just super unique. But that ending, I just kind of liked it for that subtext. But Zach, what were you thinking?
So, well, let me say this. That actually sheds a lot of light on the Trash Can Man, because the whole time I was reading, I was like, where's his angle? Why is Daniel so in on this? And so,
Yeah.
hearing that, I have a greater respect for the Trash Can Man. At least I get that, and I hear what you're all saying, and I think the ending in that context makes sense. I think it is. You have to sort of put a lens of realism over it. Give me one sec. You got to put a lens of realism over it, but just like reality, it's disappointing. It's still a disappointing story that falls kind of flat as a book that I'm trying to read for my own entertainment.
Realism
You know?
does not equal amazing or
No.
Fair.
interesting.
And like, and there is realism that's done really well. I'm not even saying realism's like it, because it is more realistic, like you're saying. I just don't think it's not a story I want to read
Yeah,
that way.
I don't
I'd
want to
rather
read the
have,
Bible. No offense.
like, and I'm not really sure that you go to the Bible for like a narrative either. You know what I mean?
Some people do,
That's
but yes,
that's
I understand
way
what you're
beside
saying.
the point.
But yes,
What I'm saying is, like, I just wish it was written differently with more, ups and downs, more traditional narrative elements.
So
Yeah.
one of the things I was going to talk about, but maybe I don't know if it really has a place in the conversation we've kind of evolved into, but I was thinking a lot about what kind of a genre I thought this book fit into. And there's a genre of movie and some books, but it's mostly a film genre that I actually think kind of describes this book really well. It's called, and I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with this, the road movie or road genre.
Are we referring to The Road, the movie?
No, although
Like,
The Road is a road
'cause I'm
genre
familiar
film
with The
piece.
Road.
The
It's
Road is
traveling.
so basically what a road film or show or book
Like
is
road trip
Content,
movie?
is it depicts travel through some kind of unfamiliar or wild territory,
Okay.
exploring themes of alienation and tension with issues of cultural identity or historical period, often dealing with characters that as they go on this journey change dramatically as
like The
they
Walking Dead.
learn and discover more about themselves.
sounds similar.
Or The Road.
Yeah, so like any kind of like big like epic journey, like the Odyssey is the classic example from the Wikipedia page,
Okay.
where it's more about the journey and watching the characters develop than it is necessarily about the end of the book.
Well,
or
I mean, if you
the
really look
film.
at it, at the end, Larry Underwood was very much content. You have Glenn Bateman that was content. You have Stu Redman that was not content, I would say, because he was promised to come back. And then he didn't make it to the end. He actually stopped and then made it back to the free boulder zone. And then who's the other person? Ralph, right?
Ralph and Nick. Well, Nick, I guess.
Nick wasn't
Yeah, that's true.
ever really content, I don't think. Maybe.
Well,
I don't
and
know.
I will say, so this genre is populated by characters that are frustrated and often desperate, who are, filled with unfulfilled kind of desires. Which
Right, and then
drives
that's when
them
they
to kind of
died, is
start
when they
genre.
were
Yeah,
content.
exactly.
So I guess,
Right
I guess
before
that
they
is
got
like
to
it's
the
like a clean
down
arc for each of them. It's like, oh, yep, you were done. Interesting.
Still, all that
Yeah.
being said, them going to Las Vegas has it
Just
made
to
no
die.
sense. Yeah, it made no sense.
Yeah.
They're just following her orders. Stupid.
Yeah.
Like,
I agree. It
I
was
think it was,
a big
That's
letdown.
fair. That's
On the
fair.
other side of that, like Franny's entire character arc being preggers, and that was her whole deal. Not great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
honestly, the funny thing about her, and I think this speaks more to the quality of the writing and of Stephen King more than anybody, is that I find her extremely unlikable.
I didn't find her unlikable. It just didn't.
I mean,
It's
I
like,
know that she's a
what-
good guy,
what
and I
is-
want to
what is
like
your
her, but
point?
I find her character just kind of odious, which is hilarious because we're definitely not supposed to like Harold, and I don't. But it's also hard sometimes because, especially at the beginning, I felt like she was a little cruel, especially with like the trauma that they were both going through. But then Harold definitely crosses a line. I'd say
Oh,
it probably it begins about the part where he's talking about murder, but really it began much earlier than that.
Yeah.
Um,
It
So-
started almost immediately with
Yeah.
them, because
Yeah.
he came up with like very sexually assaulting vibes.
Yes.
and that was not cool.
And I
was like, oh my god, am I really gonna have to read this happening? Thankfully, it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen, and
Then-
what I
Nor does it
liked-
happen ever. So
what I
just
like
know that.
about
Good.
his character is that he's kind of got this sort of like classical Greek tragedy kind of. He never really fell from grace because he was never really in grace, but he's
He
sort
almost
of
got there.
again
Real close.
he has this kind of like negative stuff in his background, which doesn't justify the way that he acts, but he realizes that there's a moment where he says, you know, I could let this all go. I'm not the person I used to be. I could just let go of my hate. I could become a good dude. People like me. I'm not this. Nobody knows. I could become a better person. That's on the table. And he says, nah, dude, I'm doubling down. I suck.
I wanna make a point on that because
and then
in
he
the
dies
series,
right
in the-
after that. And then
in-
he's like, and then as
in
soon
the
as he gets
TV
interesting, he
series,
dies. Sorry.
he in the very first episode, I think it is, they make a point to have that moment be in the very beginning with absolutely zero context, and it just doesn't hit.
That's
and it's
weird.
very disappointing. They have it to where, so the way that they set up the whole series,
Okay,
Is
should we do like final thoughts on the book and get into
Sure.
the series
Yeah,
proper?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
sure, okay,
Fine.
I'll start since I'm already talking. The
Go ahead.
book, again, I thought it was meh. I ended it and I was like, thank fucking God I'm done with that. And partially that's because I don't fucking read books. Partially that's because I was disappointed with the end. But after a few weeks of like pondering about it and watching the TV series, I honestly think that the TV series made it a little bit better. I'll more for that later. But
We'll get there. We'll get there.
the book, it was okay.
Okay.
Out of 10, if you can do that.
I don't know if I can. I don't
That's
know
fine.
if I have a
It's
numerical
That's a lot.
value
fine.
that I
We'll
would
have to think
attach
about
to
that.
this.
That's fine. Ryan?
I mean,
I'll
yeah,
get back to you on that.
I'll go next. I mean, you know my feelings on it. I don't like it. I think you're saying, you know, the story maybe is about the journey. Yes, the journey to get before they introduce Mother Abigail at all. The journey before that is great. Everything after that, not enjoyable. And then, you know, the whole ending, like I said, kind of sucks. And then what happens after the ending with the epilogue sucks even more. Like, so yes, just to go into it now since we didn't go into it yet.
Oh yeah, we
like,
gotta talk about the
like
epilogue. Yeah,
the
go
the
for it.
epilogue, you know, like the Dark Man is finally destroyed, and then no, he's not. No, he's not.
It just pops up.
Like,
Well, can you kill the devil?
which I get what they're going for, but it's stupid. It doesn't change the fact that
Yeah.
it's stupid.
It's also a disappointing factor where you're just like,
'Cause you-
oh, we're done with that. Oh,
Yeah.
we're not. Okay.
Yeah, like, oh, everybody's dead. Doesn't matter anyways. He's still here. It's like, okay, what's
Yeah.
the point? What's the point
So
of the
I-
book? There, like,
I will say-
like reading it. There's no point to me. Like, it just doesn't matter. Like,
I will say, I'll add in, there's one piece of context that you are all missing also, which is
think
if you
I know
haven't read
this.
other Stephen King literature.
oh no,
Randall
I'm not
Flagg.
missing that context. I understand that he's in other Stephen King's books.
Yeah.
It doesn't change the fact that it's
And that's
stupid.
dumb.
That
doesn't change the
that's
fact that
fair.
it's stupid.
Hey, look,
Yeah.
that's
It's
fair.
dumb.
I also want to say that the epilogue changes in the series because in the book it talks about only him, and then in the series it brings back Mother Abigail.
That's even
as a
more
character.
stupid to me. That's even more stupid to me.
All right. Let me.
I think that's a lot better than just having the Dark
mean,
Man there.
Sure.
I think that having Mother Abigail, it's like the yin and yang that I can get behind.
I
a lot better
understand
than
that.
just having him pop up out of nowhere.
Sure, I get that, and I do like that more. It's still just as stupid to me. Like,
I understand.
Fair.
Yeah, like,
Fair.
I don't
Okay.
know.
Zach?
All right. Let me. I am glad you guys were also kind of negative on this because I really thought I was gonna have to come in here and fight, but
Just fucking
here we are. So
drop
anyway,
it.
my final thoughts. I think the book is too damn long. Maybe it should have been
Yes.
cut down for a reason. Maybe read the 1100 page book. I don't know. I felt like I was also kind of glad that I was done, but I was really tearing through it. There are parts I enjoyed. Overall, I respect it more than I like it. You know,
I can get behind that.
Yeah, I
like,
agree with that.
I can see like, okay, if you like Daniel, I can see your way into this and I respect that.
That's
If
fine.
you can find joy in this book, God bless, super happy for you. But it
Just
felt
don't
to
travel
me,
to Las Vegas for it.
don't travel to Las Vegas, it's too damn long. And I felt like what it all really boils down to is it felt like Stephen King was making this stuff up as he was writing it. Like it didn't feel like he planned the whole thing out. It felt like he was
And he has
writing
said
it.
he did not.
Yeah.
Oh,
And it shows.
He said that he had a
Oh.
hard time with the middle and the ending. Yeah.
Oh,
Middle
really?
and
You
the
don't
ending,
say?
that makes a
Oh,
lot
so
of
the-
sense.
the
I
worst
was just
parts.
about to say.
The worst parts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just
so
about to
that-
say, like, hey,
That
I think that it was a really cool
explains-
idea. He's probably like, oh, dude, a pandemic that kills 99% of the people, and then they have to rebuild civilization, and then there's a bad guy. I could totally see that happening, and then just having it right at the
So
end.
like it feels like he got a really good idea, did not plan it out at all, started writing, and then got bored as it went on and couldn't figure out how to take it. You can see this. The first time you see this is Rita Blakemore, because she shows up and then she goes away, and that was Stephen King. Like, I'm bored with this character. She's gone. Nah, she'll come back. We got never mind. She's gone. And that happened. That is the entire book. He's like, this will be cool. Never mind. I'm bored.
I think
And that's
that
how I feel
is
about it.
a very well said review right there.
Okay.
That all that said, Daniel, I want to hear your final
Okay.
thoughts.
Final
Tell us
thoughts on the
about-
book. For me, 9 out of 10, 9.5, maybe a 10 out of 10.
Wow,
my opinion,
okay.
Best Stephen King
Again,
novel.
I respect that. I
Best
won't
Stephen
argue
King
that.
novel. And what makes me secure in this is I know that I am not alone. There are plenty of people who think
That's-
it's Stephen
that's
King's best
totally
novel,
fine.
and there's a reason why they've made 2 series about it. So I know that I'm not
So
alone, even if
happy
you
for you
guys,
guys.
are not the intended audience.
And even if you were alone, that's you, and that's
That's
fine.
okay.
But
Other
it's
people's
As
also
long as
opinions
important
you
that I'm not
enjoyed
alone.
it, it doesn't matter.
Right,
Yeah.
correct. And I do enjoy it very thoroughly.
Good.
I'm glad. Good.
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 Sweet.
So how
Okay,
was the
now-
show though?
So the show, though.
The show.
So I didn't watch it, but
Neither
going,
did I.
going
Full
along with
disclaimer.
what Johnny was saying, I read the review of the first episode when it came out, and understanding how it's being told was the stupidest thing.
So
That-
let's get
It
into
was
that.
one of the worst things I've ever seen.
Because
So
Whoa!
the show started off with, let's just say how the show just
I don't
there
know
was
how
9
it starts,
episodes.
but
there's 9 episodes. We started off at Boulder Free Zone.
That's weird.
and then
Yes.
they do flashbacks, and
And
then
then
they do
they do
That's like
flashbacks.
and
900
per
pages into the
character.
book.
They do flashbacks
That's
per
super
character.
weird.
The first one starting with Franny and Harold,
Well,
I believe.
do you like flashbacks? Do you like flashbacks in
Honestly.
flashbacks? Do you
Oh,
like
God.
flashbacks in flashbacks of flashbacks? Because
That's so
it's hard to tell when
confusing.
flashbacks start.
If
That
I didn't
sucks,
read the book,
dude.
it would be so convoluted that I wouldn't know what the fuck is going on. That being said, reading the book, then watching the show, I actually had more respect. So
Is it just seeing it in a visual medium and like seeing the
that.
characters?
I think it's that.
okay.
There was also some changes that they made that I liked. Like I said, Nick Andros having
Sure.
sign language, Franny
That was-
being
that
the
was good.
interpreter. I like that.
That was cool.
Tom Cullen, I think that they did a lot better outside of the book than they did
Good acting.
in the book.
That guy did a good job.
That guy did a great job with Tom Cullen, and the writers did a great job not making him absolutely
He's problematic.
very problematic in the book, for sure.
I
But-
really like that character, but I did recognize like, ooh, the 70s. Ooh.
Yeah, there were
Yeah.
there was still some stuff that was in there in the show that I was like, maybe you should probably maybe like step back a little bit. They didn't have to follow the book exactly, like the MOON that spells whatever. You
Yeah.
don't need to put that in there. You
Aw,
could
dude,
have
I
just left
loved
it out.
that, though.
You could have left it out though. You could have left it
I
out.
could've.
And
Love it.
I
But it's-
understand
you
that,
know,
but it
it's fine.
wasn't necessary. But that being
MOON,
said,
that spells full is one of the funniest lines. That was probably the funniest line of the whole thing.
that being said, Tom Cullen actor did a great job. They definitely brought in like instead of handicapped, handicapable. They brought in a lot of those sort of things that me as a non-handicapped person, I was like, okay, that's okay. Still don't have the best vibes about it, but
But
whatever.
they're doing what they can.
I'm gonna watch it anyways.
I'm
just to
glad that
watch.
they gave him more agency in the show.
I
In
think
the
so,
book,
too.
obviously, they have to hypnotize him, and it's almost like they don't trust him enough to be able to do what he's supposed to do. In the show, they tell him straight up. They treat him like a
That's
normal
a good-
dude.
okay,
and
I agree with
and he
that.
does
Yeah.
the job well. He does the
That's
job
good.
better than the other people they send.
Yeah.
You know what my
So-
biggest problem with the book? Sorry, you finish up your thoughts. I don't mean
so
to cut him.
so we start with Boulder Free Zone flashbacks. Then we continue on, and then we also show the Vegas side, which they call New Vegas, which I immediately only went to Fallout New Vegas.
Of course.
But anyways,
See ya, Bulbasaur.
they have a pool at the center of the hotel, which seems to be only Vegas to them. Is this hotel that the Dark Man is
Well,
staying
that's
in?
that's the only set they got.
Apparently, yeah. But the pool at the very base of this hotel is now a death pit that people fight to the death that they don't like or that go against the black. God, I keep
For
on
no
calling
reason.
him the Dark Man.
Yeah,
And
walking dude.
and that's it. That's it. And everybody somehow is just super okay with it. And that just struck me as like, that's not a fucking thing.
It comes off as such a dumbed down version of the book, because in the book it's not that Las Vegas is home to necessarily the evil people, or it's a pit of sin where people are just banging each other constantly and doing drugs.
Which is exactly what it came out
Drugs
on the
are
show.
outlawed. You're not allowed to. It's an authoritarian, like fear-led.
Exactly.
That's what makes it so compelling. That's the difference. That's the difference of the freedom that you see in Boulder and the control that you see in Las Vegas.
And-
That's the dichotomy. Not the pure people, and then the people who like to
The
fuck
evil
other
people,
or the people
right.
who happen to like have male genitalia who wear dresses.
That really
you
feels
know,
like a boiled down.
Fuck yourself.
Like
But
baby's first good and evil,
right.
interpretation.
They really dug deep into that, where Boulder Free Zone was apparently good, which you had Harold and Nadine in,
Mhm.
which made you feel like, what the fuck? Why is this so bad? And then it just like, this is just bad, or at least society's view of bad, which is sex, drugs, alcohol, and killing, apparently. And that was one of the points where I was like, what the fuck? Because like you were saying, it's not just good and bad. It's really like, yes, the authoritarian, but not only that, it's the people that didn't have, I would say, a goal in life and were easily swayed. And they
Yeah.
were just looking to somebody to tell them
And
what to
probably,
do.
like,
And that
closer
was the
geographically.
Also, there's a little bit of subtle stuff popped in there. For example, all the cops seem to have ended up on the authoritarian side. They don't end up having any cops in Boulder. Go figure. I mean,
Yeah, Stu
Strange.
Redman was the first choice.
Mhm.
See,
Yeah.
something I'll say, kind of back to the comic version, just because we're talking about this as a visual medium. The comic graphic novel version of it was very well done, in the sense of just it was engaging a lot more to me, especially than I think reading through the actual text would be, because as you guys are saying, it's like 1,400 pages worth of text, and each comic's about 25 to 30 pages ish, and there is 6 volumes, each of them having 5 to 6 issues in each of them.
so what
So
they say about pictures.
so they cut it down to maybe about 900 pages worth of content rather than 1,400,
They're
but
worth 1,000 words.
Got it.
but the thing about
But they read faster. Comics read
they
faster.
read a lot faster, and just in general, like, I'm so glad I was able to read that version of it rather than having to read the text, because that's, to me, there's a couple books. I mean, I was just listening to the audiobook that I couldn't get through the audiobook because it was just too wordy. I just did not care.
King sure does like to take
Yeah.
his time and describe
he does.
stuff.
There's
so,
one other
yeah.
book that I tried listening to as well, and Daniel, you're also not going to like this opinion either, but it was Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I could not give two shits about it,
Ryan.
which really sucks, because I know it's something I would love to love, but
I
he is
really-
too goddamn wordy. Like, I just
really
do
think you
not
gotta work
care
up to
about
this.
him dryly writing 10 paragraphs about describing the color of his shorts. I just
Oh,
do not
man.
care.
That's like the fucking height of comedy for me, but I
That's
get
the-
it.
Okay.
I mean,
Um,
I understand the
Ryan.
comedy parts of it, but
Look,
it
well,
just,
that's a
you can-
conversation
yeah,
for
that's-
another
that's-
time.
That's all I'm
Just-
saying.
You're gonna set me off, so let's not go there.
let's,
Okay.
let's not. Ryan, just let me say, just trust me. He threw you in the deep end. He's your uncle that you went to the lake with, and he threw you off the dock to teach you how to swim. We're gonna put you in the kiddie pool, but you're gonna read some nice books, and we're gonna work your way up to that. Okay? We're gonna
No.
get you good at books.
Johnny, there was one thing about the show, the thing that I detested
Tell me
the
about the
most, though.
Let's hear it.
And let me see if you feel this. So I open up the show, I expect them to change some things. And some of the things at first, I was like, oh, it's a great change. For example, the cast in the book is super white, super male.
Yes.
Okay?
True.
They
Yes.
diversify. We get
That's
some
good.
people of color, we get some women. But then what do you do with all the characters you make into women? Well, apparently they're not even D tier characters anymore. They are not in the story. The judge, we see her for what, once?
Yeah,
for
2 seconds. Even though her fucking story was so sick, almost killing the Dark Man before anything
Yeah,
happened.
the judge was one of the best parts.
The
the
He
judge
judge
was
is-
super sick,
judge is
and
one
they
of the
don't
best
even
characters.
show. They
Great.
don't even show
make
his
the judge
or her
make the
story.
judge into a woman, and then
Fine, great.
Just don't show her
And then you never show her again.
And then we got
okay,
bored,
cool.
so we wrote her
wait,
off
wait,
the
wait, wait.
story.
But Ralph Brentner, the heart and soul of the book, one of the greatest characters. Everybody loves Ralph Brentner. Let's make Ralph into a woman. Great. What's Ralph's role in the new show? He just
Caretaker.
takes care of Mother Abigail and only shows up when Mother Abigail needs something.
Yeah.
That's what she's here for. That's
Weird.
That's the whole point of Ralph Brentner
That's
in
a
this
choice.
copy. Not
And, like-
the head of the radio, not the one who brings everyone into Boulder, who is like one of the foundational members.
Yeah.
And
not
let's-
that we don't want that.
Like
Let's
Ralph
also
was
talk about the Native American racism that they just randomly had to throw into the show, because that's a great idea. Let's
Wait,
just
when did
throw
they do that? Did I
Whoa.
miss that?
When they started their trek over to New Vegas, they
Honestly,
What the
I
fuck
quit in
was-
episode 7.
That's
So
fine.
I never
I
made it.
finished it, and so the person that they replaced with Ralph Brentner, which I even forgot her name because she really
Ray.
wasn't that important.
Wait, so Ray Brentner does not go to Las Vegas?
Oh, is it Ray Brentner? Is
That
that
was
what it
the
is?
character's
Yes,
name.
she goes to New Vegas.
Okay.
And as they start off, they start talking about knowing the earth or something like that, knowing what weather is going to come or some bullshit like that. And then they all were like, oh, I wish we knew what the weather was going to be like. And they all look to her because she's Native American. Oh, do you think
Whoa.
that I know because I'm
Weird.
Native American? And she plays into it. That was fucking stupid. I don't know
Weird.
who
That's
thought
pretty
that was
bad.
going to be a good idea. That's fucking dumb. Why would you have a racist joke in there? Especially now. You guys are fucking idiots. That was like
Yeah.
it stopped everything for me. I was like, "Really?
that's pretty
That's
bad.
not funny."
Also, about Nadine, Amber Heard. No, I don't like her as an actress.
Which one's Amber Heard? Who's Amber Heard?
She plays Queen
you watch the
Mara
Justice
in
League?
Justice League.
Yeah.
No, I didn't fucking watch this.
I didn't know until I looked it up on IMDb. I was like, "I know your face."
Hang
Yeah.
on.
Oh,
Let
got
me
it.
Google her.
There's just a couple other
Hold
things,
on,
but I
'cause
just
I
don't
had a
like
pretty
her as an actress.
specific
And Amber Heard
imagination.
is just Nadine. She wasn't any good, and they changed her backstory, and they I don't know why
Hang
they did it.
on.
Honestly,
Her?
I never really liked
Nadine?
Nadine's backstory
What?
to begin with.
I didn't really like her so much in the book.
I thought she had a cool
She
thing
was just
going on, but
she was
get
just
it.
basically a sex doll. That's what I. That's
yeah,
what I thought.
not so much-
which is,
And I was like,
Not
"What
so
the
much
I like,
that part.
I like how she kind of has her fall from grace again. She doesn't have a lot of agency, which is disappointing.
True.
One of my other things I didn't like about the show, you tell me what you think. So they removed a couple of characters, generally speaking, unimportant characters. But one of the ones that felt most significant in the absence was Lucy, who again, female character, not much
Yes.
agency. She works basically just as Larry's girlfriend.
Okay,
Larry's
yeah.
girlfriend to get him over Nadine.
Oh, yeah.
That was the entire point of Lucy.
Yeah.
That was it.
Even in the book.
And then she gets pregnant. So her point is first to
She
get-
wasn't in the show.
Oh.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
She
so-
wasn't
so
in the show.
Not
They
in the
took
show.
her out.
They cut her out. Which actually, and again, I'm not proud that this is why I wish she was in the show because it's very shallow. But her not being in the show takes away from Larry's arc.
That's true.
Because when Nadine goes to Larry and she's like, "Hey, fuck me." Because there's no Lucy, he comes off as even more of a dick. Because he's like, "Yeah, I would fuck you, but not if you ask me like that." And she's like, "Please, like,
Whoa.
I need help." And he's like, "Nah, it's good. I'm gonna leave. You good though? We
There was
talk
no
later."
There was there was no
And
reason.
because at least in the
Wild.
book, he's like,
That was a pretty
I
decent scene in the
did
book.
want you, but I
Yeah.
have a girl, and I'm trying to change.
I had
I'm
a
trying
lot
to
of
be a better
respect for
person.
Larry in that moment.
So even though Lucy again doesn't
No.
have much agency, at least Larry gets that moment where he's like, "No, I can make a choice to be better." In
Yeah.
the show, he's like,
I like that.
"Nah, bro, you should have told me you wanted to fuck
What a
me like a couple weeks
tool.
ago, but now I'm busy.
Yeah.
I gotta go teach guitar."
it didn't hit the same, and it was way worse.
And he comes off as a huge jerk. And when he asks later, he's like, "Wow, is this my fault?" I'm like, "Yeah, you know what, Larry? It
Little.
kind of is. You were a huge dick, and then this is what happened."
She professed her love, and you were like, "Not
Nah,
today."
I got more important things to do, though.
Maybe if it was yesterday.
A small note on the casting, and probably the only critique I can offer on this show, because I did not watch it, but as I was reading the book, you read 1,400 pages of characters, you're going to solidify your own mental image. So I have my own very personal familiarity bias. And I think one of you mentioned, is it James Marsden? Right?
Yes.
That's his name?
Yeah.
They were like, yeah, James Marsden's in the show. And I was like, oh my God, that's perfect casting. They nailed it on Larry. He's going to do a great job as
Oh,
Larry.
no.
And then you were like, no, he's Stu. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? He's Stu. That doesn't
He's
make
my
any
favorite
fucking
part of the
sense
show,
at all.
I gotta say, he does make
was.
sense as Stu. Because do you guys
does.
watch Westworld?
Though
A little
he
bit.
is
He's
fucking
playing
old.
Teddy
just-
from Westworld.
Real quick, he's just not at all what I pictured in my head. He
Yeah.
basically is who I cast in my head as Larry, and it made perfect sense to me.
A younger
And then
version
it
of
was
him, I
very
would
jarring.
agree. So that was another thing that I kind of had an issue with was Fran. The actress for Fran was 18 or something, really young, and this dude is 40, and they're making out, and it's
It's
the only thing that I can think
post-world.
of.
The age isn't much of a factor anymore.
But they're not that
Age is
much
just a
older in the
number.
book, and it was just something distracting.
See, how old is
That
Larry
being
in the
said-
book? He's like in his late 20s, I imagine. right?
Larry's in
Well,
his
not Larry. We're talking
Larry's
about
in his
Stu
20s.
and
Stu's
Fran.
in his 30s, mid 30s, early 30s.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Fran is in her like mid 20s, so
'Cause
it's not that bad.
Fran's
Yeah.
like 20.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's like,
Regardless.
still.
See,
She was in high school, or I mean, not
No,
high
no,
school.
no, she
college,
was- yeah,
but
she was in college.
No, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So not
They're all,
mid-20s,
you know,
whatever.
They just-
Anyways,
Anyway.
That's
the
fair.
way that the series worked out, I think the Hand of God part was a lot better. It turned out to be
Really?
like this mode of lightning that just kind of came down into the. Let me disclaimer: the ending still fucking sucks, but it's a lot better than a fucking hand out of nowhere.
Okay. All right.
It's a mode of lightning that comes into that hotel, down to that pool that I was talking about, shoots lightning at fucking everybody that's inside of it, and just kills everybody.
Cool. Wait, not a nuclear bomb?
I'm sure
and
the
then-
nuclear bomb is involved.
And then Trash Can Man is just like, yeet! Which also, playing Trash Can Man the way that they did,
They did
he
Tom
is
Cullen so
very-
much better, and then they did
and
him
then they just
so wrong.
so dirty. But anyways, he drives the golf cart into the hotel just next to that pool, of course, because they only had one fucking set for the entire New Vegas. And then after he drives like I said, he drives the nuclear bomb into the pool or area. He's all fucking radiated and looking like shit. He's like, my life for you. And then the mode of energy comes in, destroys everybody. Darkman, then bomb. Bomb is the very last thing. Whatever fucking happened to this lightning, it blew everybody else up, and then the bomb.
That's cool.
Wild.
So,
So did the lightning kill all the good guys there too then? Or
no, they drowned them.
oh, okay.
Oh, cool.
So that's cool.
All right.
Yep.
What the hell?
What a waste.
Interesting.
Well,
It's not the
So-
only thing that was a waste. We'll talk about that next.
So that's that.
yeah.
I'll cut that
Anyway,
part out.
show
go
not
on,
good.
Ryan. What are you talking about?
Show not good. Read the book though. Seriously, do read the book.
If this sounds like your thing.
If you like religious black and white, good versus evil, know that the ending is not the best, but the beginning is definitely
If
interesting.
anything we've talked about sounds
okay.
interesting to you, then go ahead and try it.
Before we wrap up,
But be
I
warned.
will
And I
go
have one
on.
final question too after you.
Sure.
Daniel mentioned in the very beginning too that when he was doing the synopsis about how the initial guy who set this pandemic loose, that was probably the black or the dark man in black's doing, which there was a lot of
in the
imagery.
show
They make it explicit.
In the show,
Right.
they make it very explicit. They
Okay.
put
Right.
his foot right in front
That's
of the
fine.
door where the guy runs out.
Oh,
So,
okay.
just
See,
wanted to
that's
add that in.
that's more dumb than that's stupid.
No, I don't mind that.
No,
I,
that's
I
pretty
wanted
cool.
to
I
say,
like that, honestly.
I did want
I'm-
to say
I'm
I don't
okay with
mind
it.
the supernatural
Well,
elements. I
Yeah,
thought they were fine.
I'll say
They were
how they
just
did it.
unsatisfying.
How they did it in the comic, and I'm listening to the audiobook prologue as well because I listened to like 3 or 4 times just because I kept forgetting it because I just
Yeah.
could not get into it.
Yep.
There is a moment where they talk about there being a raven or a crow watching the entire thing. Literally, that's what the show should have done still, too, and just established later on in the show, that crow was for sure him. Having
it is
his
a really
door,
cool shot though.
It is a cool shot. It doesn't show him. It just shows
The boot.
barely a little bit of the boot. Yeah.
like holding open the door.
It
and
is
then
a cool
the boot
shot.
goes away. That's
gotta say-
the best part of the whole show.
I gotta say, I think that they could have done a little bit better by having like the door a little bit more closed and just having it like just barely there, because that's what it seemed like in the book, was that he was just barely able to get out. And in this case, it just seemed like he was like, "Oh, the door's open, sweet," and then he just made his way out. So they could have done it a little bit better.
Wait, so
but it was a good shot.
Were you guys saying that he was inside the thing and then that was him getting out? Is that what
It was literally, so dude in the background, right? You have the dude in the
Campion.
background on Campion. He's on like the controls. He's like, "Oh my god, shit's going crazy." And then you have the camera zooms out, and then you see the door in the background that is currently, you see the very bottom left corner, the boot, and the door is just
and it's like trying to
closing
close, but it
on
like can't.
And then you see him running from the control out of the door. So you
And then
never
as soon as he
see
gets
him
through,
exactly.
The boot pulls
boot
back
closes and then the door
shuts.
closes. Yeah.
Got it.
So,
okay.
It
Sounds
was a
cool.
cool shot. I thought it was a really interesting thing because of the fact that it's like we all knew that was totally him doing it.
Makes
But
sense. All right.
Anyway, sorry, Ryan.
Yeah, I was just
over.
gonna say I like the imagery of the crow more so than a blatant slap in the face. Like that's better
it.
to me. That was his doing.
I can
than-
respect that.
Than
I can go either way.
yeah,
just
I
having the
don't know.
overlooming, ominous
Yeah.
raven rather than the very direct action of the Darkman.
Yeah, because I mean, that's all you need is him.
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
a
yeah,
little
yeah.
bloop.
Just, you don't even need to know exactly how he did it. You just need to know that he was there and
Right.
involved. Yeah, I get
my,
you.
my last question for you guys is: would you call this a fantasy book, a fantasy novel?
No.
You
No.
know,
I'll tell you why.
Please do,
I
because
think-
I would say yes.
I think,
I understand why you would say yes, but I would say no.
yeah, I'm in between. Go ahead, Zach.
I
I'll
feel
answer
like I see it has supernatural elements. It has the magic. It has the big spooky dark man. But really, like, this book is so rooted and obsessed with like Americana and Midwestern imagery that it really just doesn't give off the right aesthetic that I'm looking for in a fantasy book. You know?
So
Just-
fantasy is very much the fantastical, the unreal, the unheard
agree.
of, the stuff that you can only come up with imaginations. This did a very good job of making it real. As we stated before, the pandemic, very much mimicking the pandemic that we're in, or will soon be out of. Hopefully, get your fucking vaccination, people, and wear a goddamn mask, please. Thank you.
Yeah. Also, if only they'd
Yes,
done that.
do that.
If they wore a mask, they'd be possibly okay. Anyways, they did a really good. He did a really good job at mimicking a pandemic, showing how Campion drove from California all the way to Texas and all of the stops that he must have made, and those people seeing people, and then those people taking a flight over to the East Coast, and then those people going down to Florida, and then Florida going up to the southwest or the northwest and shit like that, right?
Yeah.
Really great job. That being said, I would say that it's not a fantasy book, but I do understand, like what Ryan was saying, that you could definitely compare it to a fantasy book because of the fact with the supernatural things happening and stuff like that, because obviously that's not. I do think that it was a little too religious for me to say that it was a fantasy book, though.
See, I
Throwing the religion in there,
I
very
agree.
real religion, God and the devil,
What-
I couldn't do it.
what I would say is you could call this a religious fantasy novel. I think that might
I'd
be
be
a
okay with
slight
that.
subgenre.
Yeah,
that
Maybe.
okay with that.
I just feel like there's too much of that realism we were talking about earlier, and
Yeah.
too much like New York City, Boulder, like really grounding it in real life America and constantly just reveling in Americana. That
Yeah.
I feel like it holds it back from being fantasy. What are your thoughts on this, Daniel? What makes it a fantasy book to you?
For me, well, I think I'm about to read the dictionary definition, but for me, I think it's this genre that
Nerd.
Stephen King is one of the few people I think that's kind of mastered, which is like a fantasy book that's set in a version of the world that we live in. He uses these exact same techniques in the Dark Tower series, which I think is informed a lot by the work that he did in The Stand, in the way that he develops the characters, in the way that they walk through these different worlds, because without going too deep into spoilers for that series, there's a lot of universe hopping and parallel worlds and interdimensionality, and the textbook definition of a fantasy, you know, is a story that uses magic or supernatural elements as a main plot element, theme, or setting. Magic are common in these worlds. It identifies, and identifying creative fantasy as an author's use of narrative elements that do not rely on history or nature to be coherent. This differs from realistic fiction in that realistic fiction has to attend to the history and natural laws of reality, where fantasy does not. Writing fantasy, the author creates characters, situations, and settings that are not possible in reality. And what I love about this book is that we get to see the transition from the world that we know and are familiar with to a fantastical one, which is why I would call it a fantasy.
So, expanding on what you're saying, kind of supporting your idea, you have the busy world of America from before. You're not able to really see exactly what's happening because there's so much happening already that you can't really focus on, you know, the fantastical part of it. Then 99.9% of the population die out and it quiets really fucking quick. That's when things are put into perspective, where you see that really it is God and the devil, and that is what drives this world. That's when you start seeing Franny, you start seeing Nick Andros, you start seeing Mother Abigail, all having these premonitions. And speaking specifically to the bomb, you have Franny that is just getting this terrible feeling like, what the fuck is going on, when they're having that final meeting just before it explodes. Then you also have Nick Andros that goes into the closet and is like, this is a bomb. Oh shit. And then boom. You have and then you have Joe, or I can't remember his actual name.
Leo,
that is a telepathic. He can tell what people are thinking, basically.
Yeah.
He knows exactly that Harold is a bad person. He knows when Nadine is going bad because he can just tell. He's like
he's an empath, is what I would say.
Empath, yeah. That's like a freaking WandaVision. Her son, the other dude. Anyways, regardless,
spoilers.
You have all of those. You have all of those magical things, right?
Right.
So I think that was his way of saying, like, this is real America, and we're just gonna focus it on down to fantastical side of the real world. So
yeah.
I understand what you're saying.
But I
taking
get it.
Taking that perspective,
I understand.
yes,
I think there's a conversation to be had, and that's why I wanted to ask that question.
Yeah, that's a good
I think
point.
it's if it is, it's really riding the line.
It's your definition of fantasy. It is not my definition of fantasy.
Fair.
D&D is my definition of fantasy.
Final thoughts, anyone? Any final last words they want to leave us with?
Final thoughts. You know, this is Stephen King. You know, this is the same person that wrote It, and we all know of the famous scene in It.
Look,
if you don't know what it is, you know, you could probably look it up and Google what the controversy is in that book, and you'll find out real fast.
Stephen King's a mixed bag. You know, everybody's heard a lot of his work. He's got some real good masterpieces and some clunkers, but he's got a wide variety of work, so it's bound to happen. He super does, dude. But you know,
the last thing that
Stephen
I want to say,
King, reach out. We'd love to have you on the podcast.
We would, yes.
Yeah,
if
right.
we know you're listening. Please
Dude,
just reach out.
Oh my God. Anyways, okay. So my last thoughts, if I were to throw anything out there, is I am very much conscious about social justice stuff, and it was very much a distracting book because of the fact of how he portrays female characters. It's always about what they look like. It's never about what they're doing. How he portrays.
Minus like maybe one character. Danny Jurgens, maybe, depending on how you want to slice it.
Maybe, yeah.
Who?
One of the spies. Anyway,
she still dies
Right,
though.
okay, yeah.
She does.
While doing
not a great
stuff.
example. I don't want to get too off track.
in the TV series,
We could do
she's
this all
badass as
night.
fuck. I really want to say that they did a really good job with her.
That's good.
Really great job.
Good for her.
Anyways, the book itself, it's misogynistic. It puts mental handicaps into a bad light. It puts physical handicaps into a bad light. It puts racial pieces into a bad light. it's a product of its time.
It was a different time. You gotta keep it in that
But-
context, but still, it's good to know.
Still, in
Okay,
this
and it's okay to
time,
critique
it
these things.
is something that was very distracting.
Fair.
I
For
think,
sure. Fair.
I think that's my bet.
That's
my
true.
last.
It's
my
true.
last thing.
If you're gonna read this, wait a couple years.
Yeah.
That's the last thing I'm gonna say.
Unless you're into that, I find it kind of
Unless you're into
that.
but
I thought it
I'm
was
a
interesting.
weirdo, and
I
also
didn't put it down. I was like, this is cool.
the pandemic
Hated it.
genre
It was rough for me.
pre 2020 was still one of my favorites. So.
Pandemic
Yeah.
genre pre 2020, I'm into it. Post 2020, I'm into it. Right now, while we're in it,
Yeah.
I read books for escapism to try and
Yeah.
forget reality.
Same with,
I
like,
don't
D&D.
need a glaring
Yeah.
reminder
I get
in
you.
my face. That's where
totally
I'm coming
understood.
from.
Um,
Anyway.
So I will have one last thing I'll say. I've been obviously pretty harsh on the book. I clearly do not like the ending. I do not like some of the supernatural stuff, which is crazy because in real life I think supernatural stuff is very interesting, and I find that very fascinating. But in this book, mainly because the way Daniel sold this to us was a pandemic survival story. That's what I wanted out of it, and it wasn't that. That being said, it's not the worst book by any means. Like I don't absolutely hate this book as much of a
Put that
passion
on the
as,
dust jacket.
as much of a passion that I feel like I've been coming across in this
Well, so-
podcast.
I get where you're coming from because, like I said, I got real heated and then I started cooling down. Give it a few more weeks, you'll be cooler than you are now. That's
Oh
just
no,
how it
dude,
goes.
I knew how this book ended months ago. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know.
yeah.
so
And
before I
you've
even
been
started
heating up.
reading any of it, I knew how it ended. So I'm not heated
Time
because of
heals all
that.
wounds.
I
those
just I think it's just stupid.
Just the direction
period.
of the story.
Yeah. Regardless, all of it being said, even with me knowing how it ended before I started reading it, I didn't think it was the worst thing in the world. I just thought it was stupid. That's
Yeah.
the biggest thing
Okay.
to me.
I'll go with that.
I think it's just a disagreement on how the story went.
Yes.
I think that they could have gone a completely different way, and it would have been cooler.
You
Like,
coulda- you coulda
focusing
written-
on the pandemic and just focusing on that.
Yeah.
That would have been.
He could
Regardless-
have written a tighter story and made it more satisfying. Go on. Ryan.
All I was gonna say, like I said, it wasn't the worst.
No,
It just-
I don't regret reading it.
Good.
For all my criticisms, I don't regret reading it.
For that,
Yeah.
I'm happy. And to you, the audience member, if you've somehow stuck around this whole time, thank you for listening.
Yeah,
I think
really.
we talked like maybe twice the time that I thought we were going to do on this, which is great. 'cause
No, I know,
I'm
definitely.
so happy that we got a chance to talk
Oh,
about
I
it.
knew this was not going to be short. I was going to go off.
Okay,
And
I'm gonna
I
say
hope-
I'm gonna say one last thing. I'm gonna say one final thing. I would not.
fucking-
recommend-
okay,
Okay,
always.
here.
I
I,
know.
was wrapping it up, but sure, you
I
go
know.
ahead, Ryan.
I would not recommend it. Like literally, you could get through the entire book by reading the summaries. You'd get everything you needed out of it through that. Like that's
you
not
can
what
get
I
through any
novel.
book if you just read the summaries, but that's not
Right.
what makes it fun.
Right, but the point is though, like that I'm trying to make is like I read through it. I understood what the story was about. I if I had done that and we didn't have to do this recording talking about it, I wouldn't have read it. It's like okay, I don't care. Like
Fair.
I'm it's not something I'm gonna review. So
That's fair.
that's all I would.
I would
Fair.
say
Final thoughts.
only read it if you are still interested after this episode.
I
Yes.
recommend it wholeheartedly. I think
Yeah.
anybody who has any sort of interest should check it out.
If you need a
and
book to
if-
read, go for it.
If you have questions or if you have suggestions for other fantasy book club of the month, probably not every month, episodes that you want us to cover, shoot us up at Twitter. We're at talking_XP. Check us out on YouTube. Subscribe where you can probably find videos like this, as well as our D&D podcast, which we post once monthly, as well as our other content like our one shot of the month, and plenty more will probably be coming on its way soon. Also find us on Twitch, talking_XP, pretty much everywhere else. We'll leave links in probably all the places where we end up posting this. But once again, thank you all for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye. Read good books.
Read.
Just read books.